Hi everyone and welcome back to another art journal video. Today I'm going for a double page art journal on my A5 stone paper journal, and this is one from my collection that has this stone paper which is perfect for any different type of medium that you want to use. It always stays nice and flat and it doesn't bleed through. So for today I'm going to play with acrylic paints for my background, and I chose these three different colors. You will find the exact names and code numbers on the description down below along with the rest of the supplies that I used, but in any case you can use two shades of blue and a lighter shade like white or ivory. First I'm going to apply a layer of acrylic paint. This is not going to be what you will see at the end. I'm just trying to break that blank page so that it doesn't look so scary. So I'm starting with a damp brush and I'm just applying the color directly on top of the pages. You see the pages remain completely flat just because I'm working on stone paper. I applied a little bit of water first on my pages, which makes spreading that color really easy. And again, remember, I'm not going to leave it as it is. I will do lots of layers on top of it, but this is a great base. Now I'm going to use one of those sponge dabbers. I have used it before. I like to wash it, don't throw it away, and I will show you how easy it is not to leave the paint dry in there. So first of all, I'm going to apply one of the other colors that I have on my craft table, and I'm just dabbing the color all over the place. I'm going mainly where I haven't touched the page, where it is quite white, and I'm dabbing up and down, which leaves a fun texture, and both visual texture as well as actual texture. If you touch it, it is going to feel like quite rough. Now I'm going to bring in the ivory color, and without cleaning up my sponge, I'm going to continue doing the exact same technique. So this is a very fun background technique where you use three different colors on your background, two very close colors and a lighter ivory one, for creating a background by just dabbing up and down. Just have fun with it, mix all the three colors together, dab 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 until you are happy with the outcome. So here is how the background looks after finishing this step, and since I do have a little bit of acrylic paint on there, I'm going to dilute it with water and let's create some splatters. And I'm going to use both colors for my splatters. I absolutely love them. I always add them in my mixed media projects. I feel like they give that organic look and they kind of disguise any mistakes that you do. So here is how it looks at this stage. I absolutely love it, and I am going to add splatters later on at the finished stage, but for now I'm happy. I'm going to place this sponge dabber inside my water so that it doesn't dry, and when I finish with the whole project I will go at the sink and wash it. Really easy, just like I wash my brushes with water. A favorite step of mine when I am creating an art journal background is to use a stencil. For this project I'm going to use my volume paste, and I'm trying to find which parts of the stencil I'm going to use and where. And by the way, I get this question a lot: how do I know where to apply the stencil with the paste? The truth is that at this stage I have no idea where I'm going to stick my focal points or how the focal points are going to look like exactly. So I just go along with it. I'm having fun with my mediums layer by layer, and I don't consider what is going to happen later on. Just be free and play with the stencil, and whatever happens is okay. Now I am in love with this stencil. This is one of the new stencils from Songs of the Sea, new Stamperia collection. I love the stencils that give you different areas to play with because I find that these are the most versatile ones. You see, for this project I'm mainly staying with the net, the stencil area that gives you words, as well as the compass. The paste that I'm using is the volume paste by Stamperia. It is nice and thick, and you see you get always the perfect impression. It doesn't take too long to dry, but I would suggest to leave it and dry, to air dry, because when you use your heat gun very close to it, it might bubble. And now let's see something funny. This happens to me all the time. As you can see, I was working upside down. That means that I have to turn my book over, and when I do that, the text from the stencil is upside down. Do I care? No. Am I going to continue working on this page? Definitely. Remember, this is just for visual texture, it's not meant to be read, and by the time I finish you will not even notice. So don't worry about things like that, just feel free to do mistakes and just go ahead and continue as if nothing happened. Now I'm going to bring in this background stamp from the same collection as the stencil, Songs of the Sea, and I will use the one that looks like a net. I'm going to stamp with black ink and use that mainly on the edges, and you can definitely use just your fingers and not use a stamping block. I am not going for the perfect impression and you will see all the imperfections. You can always go back on top of it and just stamp again and again. I'm trying to add that lovely texture of this stamp and at the same time to include some black stamping on the background. Now I am using my Element Stamp Set, my absolute favorite. I keep on using it on pretty much every art journal since I designed this stamp set, and I'm going with the text. I am going to stamp it here and there in some areas, again adding some black visual texture on the background. Again, I'm having fun with this stamping step without considering where any of the focal points are going to fall later on. And since we do have the black ink pad out, I'm going to swipe it on top of my glass mat, dilute it with water, and I'm going to add some black splatters. I feel like the splatters are kind of magically bringing everything together. So you see now the black stamping doesn't look as random. Now, I always get a question about how I control my splatters. I don't. Sometimes they don't fall exactly where I want to. However, I tend to use a very thin brush, as you can see here, which means that I don't end up with very big blobs of splatters. And this is really helpful for me to kind of control where they are going to fall. So here is how the background is looking at the moment, and I am super happy with it. I think it's time to work on my focal points. So I'm going to bring in the pack of ephemeras from my latest collection, where you will find lots of frames as well as labels that you can play with to create clusters. These are designed so that you can easily add elements, focal points on top of them. You can create clusters with this pack of ephemeras and then add your focal point on top, whether this is a flower, it can be a mermaid like in this project for example, or whatever you feel like. Now you can definitely cut out from this collection any of the elements. However, I'm going the old way for this project. I'm going to work only with stamps and my big brush markers. And this is a gorgeous stamp set. I absolutely love her, and it doesn't have to be a mermaid. You can use her as a normal girl. I am going to stamp her by using my MISTI just because I want to get a good impression so that I can stamp it a couple of times. And for stamping her, I'm using archival ink. This is permanent ink. I'm not using the dye ink because that's for other techniques. For the technique that I'm going for, I need to make sure that this is completely permanent. And she's looking absolutely gorgeous, and now we need to go ahead and color her. For this step you can definitely use whatever coloring medium you are comfortable with. You can go with alcohol markers, you can go with watercolors, you can even use your pencils. I'm going with my big brush markers because I absolutely love the way that they work with my fingers, the way that I can smudge them and blend them, and the mixed media look and feel that they give at the end. First, I need to make sure that this image is non-porous. That's why I covered it up completely with my rice paper glue. You can use matte media glue, and then make sure that the glue is completely dry before you go ahead and use your markers. Now, the markers that I like to use are the Faber-Castell Pitt big brush markers. These days they come in this dual barrel where you get a fine tip as well as a brush tip. I do still have my older ones that I have been using for years. They never dry, trust me. And they are also available in a thin barrel. If you are looking for this product, whichever you get is the same. Only the barrel and the tip of the marker differs, but they do all have India ink, which allows you for this technique that I am going for today. For her flesh I'm going to use the cinnamon color, and I'm able to smudge it only where there is matte medium or rice glue underneath. Otherwise you will not be able to smudge it. Now I'm going to apply a little bit on one side and then blend it out, and I will continue doing that again and again until I build up the amount of color that I want for her flesh. This is buildable, so you can start lighter and you can go darker and darker as you go. You need to move quite fast because this is going to dry permanent completely, but it gives you a few seconds to smudge it before it completely dries. It's really a very foolproof technique. It's really simple. I'm just brushing a little bit of color on my design and then smudge it with my finger, and then again and again until I'm happy with the result. Now it is going to give you a very artistic look, a very mixed media look. It's not going to look perfect. If you're going for perfection, you can always use your pencils, you can use your alcohol markers and just be very precise on how you color inside the lines. Now I'm going to use an even darker marker to intensify the shadows somehow, and this is Indian red. Don't be afraid to use very dark markers. They really make your designs come to life. Now if these stills look difficult but you want to recreate this idea, you can definitely just cut out the mermaid that is in the pad. So just fuzzy cut her and use her the way I'm going to use this one later on. However, by using the stamps, they give you the opportunity to color her any way that you like. She can have any tint of flesh that you want. She can have any color of hair that you want. So for example, in the pad, the hair are turquoise and bluish, if I remember. However, here I'm going with oranges and pinks. And of course, the beauty of having the stamp is that you can use her again and again on other projects. She is not just from a paper pad that you use her only once. You fuzzy cut her, stick her somewhere and you are done. Now she is going to look like a hot mess. Trust me, this is not how she's going to look at the end, because once you fuzzy cut her and you stick her on top of your project, she is going to magically transform into a gorgeous girl. So I also gave her some red lips. I'm also going to give her some green eyes, and for her shell earrings I'm going to use yellow. And now I'm going to fuzzy cut her. If you find some hair is quite difficult to cut out, just chop them off. No one will ever know that they were there. And I'm going to frame her. I'm going to use one of my ephemera frames and place her inside, so you don't really need to pay attention on what is happening at the bottom of the girl. And so you see here I have placed her down, and of course I need to stick all the strands of her hair that are going outside of the frame. The ephemera frame is self-adhesive, but for the girl I use my matte glue. Now for using focal points for the other two elements that give you the exact look and feel as the girl, I'm going to use this stamp set, use the same techniques as the girl, and with the magic of video editing, here are all three of them. For these frames I'm going to use background, so for that I'm using just one of the papers from the paper pad. Now when I'm using my ephemera frames, I always like to use a focal point that is tucked inside the frame, but it kind of comes out of it. I think it gives it more movement and there is something more interesting on the page. So that's exactly what I'm doing here, as I am sticking all the elements together to create the rest of my focal points. I'm making sure that this coral, for example, is going outside of the frame, and this one, as I'm going to stick it down, I'm going to stick it on top of the frame instead of just tuck it in behind. And I will do the same thing with the other little frame as well. I don't show it always on the video, sometimes I just edit it out, but I always ink up the edges of my cutouts so that I don't have a white edge, and I think that by having a black or brown inked edge, it always helps the cutout to stand out against the background. Now to bring all the elements together, I'm doing a little bit of stamping again with the same text stamp that I used for the background, just in a few areas here and there, and I will repeat the same idea on the girl as well, of course not on her face or on her flesh, I will do it just on her hair. So let me stick those down first. And then I'll do that detail stamping on top of my girl. Again, don't overdo it, just in a few areas will do the trick. And if you follow my videos, you know what is coming next, the white gel pen. So I have a set of 3, I like to use a thicker one, this is the number 10 jelly roll. And again, you will find everything I'm using linked down below. I'm adding some highlights on all the cutouts, the corals, the seaweed. I'm also going to add some highlights on her lips, a dot on each of her eyes. It's going to bring her into life, as well as some details and highlights on her hair. I'm also going to add some white splatters that I want to make sure that they fall on top of all those elements, as well as on top of her hair, making sure that it's not going to go crazy on her face and her eyes, because I will lose all the details of that stamping. But you see, again, I'm using the small brush so that I can somehow control where all those drops are falling. And you see, I do have a bigger one that I don't like on her body. Just wipe it off and you're good to go. I did use calligraphy white ink because I find that it's super handy. I don't have to dilute it, but you can definitely use acrylic paint and dilute it with water. Now for my quote, I'm going to combine cutout letters to put together the word mermaid, as well as some phrases which I'm going to print out with my label maker. So first of all, I'm going to put together the word mermaid, and I always like to lay down all the letters and decide how they are going to look nice, and then I just go ahead and stick them down. Now I get a lot of questions about my label maker and how I print white letters on top of a black background. I do that because I have a specific refill. You will find the link down below. So I'm putting my phrase together. The quote is going to be half on one page and the other half on the other page. And I went with a really fun one today that says, always be yourself, unless you can be a mermaid, then always be a mermaid. And then again, I'm going to bring in my white gel pen. I'm going to draw some sketchy lines around my phrases, on all 3 of them. And this is where I thought that my mermaid needs something extra to complete her, so I decided to add something on her hair. It could be a shell or a starfish. I went with a bluish starfish. And this will be the finishing touch for today. So that was the project for today. A full list of all the supplies that I used can be found down below in the description. Don't forget to like, to leave me a comment. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and I'll see you all next time.